I pictured a little mouse this size goes into the zoo and eats an elephant and doesn't get any larger and walks out. If he got that, there's telepathy. Of course he didn't get it. I forget, well, maybe he missed this one. So I then pictured a carpenter's saw, you know, a wood saw with legs, and it walks into the forest, and a tree looks at the saw, and the tree cuts the saw in half. See, now if he got that, there's telepathy. The others, I'm thinking of my grandfather, well, that's possible, you know, he can get that. He didn't get anything. So I then read of a couple that, in Reader's Digest, that had the power of telepathy. So I invited him over to my lab. I said, if you have that power, I will shout it and write about it and everything. Because most people are not qualified observers. So he had his wife go into my bedroom. And he was in the front room, and I whispered something in his ear. You know, some movie actor or president of the past. And his wife came out, and she just looked and said, "You're thinking of James Fillmore." And that's what I whispered in there, very low. And here, let me tell you how it's done. They work together. If you don't know how it's done, it looks great. They work together on posturing. If he's seated like that, it means Lincoln. This means Washington. So all I do is whisper in there, and he sits a certain way.
Right.
But if you don't know that, it looks like he's really reading the mind. Then I had another guy come over. He says, look, he says, I know you're skeptical, and I know you're scientific, but I'm the first time we ever met. I said, right? He says, you name a president, then call my friend on your phone in England, and he'll tell you who you called. I said, that sounds pretty good. So I was picturing first Abraham Lincoln. I said, you want me to picture him and all that? I said, all that'll help. Then I called Mr. Benson in England. And the first thing he said to me is, I see a strange hat that flares out like that. Then I see a big black birthmark and a beard and a mustache, and it's Abraham Lincoln. This guy called in England. Then he said, now you want to call a friend of mine in New Jersey who's also psychic. So you pick a movie actor. So I picked, you know who Gary Grant is? Well, in those days, he was a star. So I called this guy in New Jersey. He says, I see a skinny guy, actor, his name is Gary Grant, right away. That was the best I've seen, here's how it's done. But if you don't know how it's done, most people that see that are convinced there's telepathy. He's got a friend in England. And if you ask for the guy's name is Throckmorton, but if you ask Mr. Benson, it's Abraham Lincoln. Same guy in England. He's got a list. If you ask Mr. Thornton, it's Benjamin Franklin. So he's got that list. Depends on who you ask for.
Right.
But if you don't know that, hey, I've seen it, I heard it with my own ear. Normal people are not qualified observers. I also met a guy in Trinidad, an Indian, that can change his pulse rate. And the doctors would check his pulse, and you make it weak or strong. So I checked it. I had a cork ball under the armpit, pressing. He weakened his pulse. But the doctors didn't know that. Do you understand? Before I went on this hunt for extra-physical phenomena, I read everything I can get hold of on how it's done.
Have you heard of the girl in Russia named Natasha Dimkin, who can see through walls?
Yeah, well, the guy that bent spoons and all that.
No, it's a woman. She's like 16, and she can see through walls and see through your body and diagnose illness in like another room.
A lot of that stuff. There was a guy that had a wheel turning, and there was no connections, electrical. He said he invented perpetual motion. Well, I had a detector, and he had a gadget built in the wall that turned around with magnets on it, and that turned this unit. But if I checked it out, I want to show you something now. You can't pull them apart, but don't bend it. Try to pull them apart straight without bending it at all. Very hard to do. It can be done. Now if you take it and do that. You can take it apart, but they're very hard to push together. Keep them in line, see? They can be done, but it's very hard. That's how maglev trains work.
Yeah.
Now here's how the telepathists work. Okay. I take a magnet sometimes, wonderful, very hard to get on, hold it in your hand. And I put a picture of George Washington and Lincoln on the other side. And this is built under the table. And I say Lincoln, Washington, you know. And the kids think I'm blowing on it. So I put a glass over it. Hold your other hand under it and try to block it doubly, close, you know.
Don loves you.
Oh. See, it doesn't matter, okay? But if you don't know that, I can do all that, but I wouldn't do that. I would never deceive people. I would tell them how it was done. Everything that was done with rare earth magnets. Then there was another guy in the Bible, Saint. He had a halo glowing over his head. If you get the book called Anomalies and Curiosities in Medicine, there are skin diseases that are phosphorescent. Did you know that? So if you had a scalp disease, it would glow in the dark.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But if you don't know those things, you get into metaphysics.
Right.
And that's strictly bullshit. All of it. There's nothing, nature is very lawful. And it doesn't violate, the cat can't turn into a horse.
You don't believe in mutants?
In what?
Mutants?
Mutants? Yes. That's real. Freaks, mutants, all that. But all floating in midair, all that's done electromagnetically, or there's no magic. Now the people that read your aura, you've heard of that? That's another BS thing.
Tell me about it.
There are many diseases of the eye and that cause a double image around you, but they're not seeing an aura. They don't know what they're seeing. But if you get the book Anomalies, if you really want to know, then there's a book called Unusual Phenomena. That book is raining fish and frogs and snakes. All that's real. Sometimes a vortex picks them up and drops them, but there's no magic. A monkey doesn't turn into an elephant. That's what I mean by magic. Now, that people go to a place called Lourdes, you know about it? In wheelchairs and get up and walk. Now, why doesn't a guy go there without legs and say, I need legs? They always ask for reasonable things. A guy without an eyeball doesn't go there and says, I need a right eye. It was an auto accident 10 years ago. Never. So you check on Lourdes, you'll find that most people that get out of wheelchairs, not all of them, are hysterically paralyzed. You know what that means? Sometimes they see their kid run over by a Mack trucker. They can't walk in. And sometimes if you believe in something, brought up to believe in it, like a witch doctor, he says the man that committed the crime will die. So he holds a skull. He lines up all the people and he holds a skull over their head. As he gets nearer the guy that committed it, that guy is brought up to believe in it, and he starts shaking. And sometimes they drop dead. Can you understand that? Now there's such a thing as psychosomatic conditions where an asthmatic, according to the medical books, got up at night and said, I can't breathe. Nurse, open the window. I'm having trouble. So no nurse came. So he picked up the water jug and threw it at the window. Took 5 deep breaths and went back to sleep. In the morning, he hit the medical cabinet, not the window. You understand?
No, I didn't get that part.
Sometimes your attitude, if you're fed the best, healthiest food in the world, but are a depressed person, it turns to poison. See, so a good attitude is good for your health, but there's no magic. You can't make a table levitate.
So it's just degrees of not understanding that makes the thing look
A lot of stuff say, you can say, honestly, I don't know how he did it. This guy in England told me who I was thinking. Say, I don't know how he did it, but don't invent he did it by telepathy.